Quickfill gasoline is made right here in America. United Refining Company, who operates Quickfill, refines its gasoline from North American crude oil in Warren, Pennsylvania. When you buy United Refining Company gasoline at Quickfill, you keep jobs and businesses in America. And you keep American families strong. You don't need to send your money overseas when you buy gasoline. Buy American-made gasoline at Quickfill. Quickfill, driving America.
From baggage claim to pajamas in 10 minutes. Erie International Airport. Fly with ERI.com.
Fly Erie International Airport to Charlotte on American Airlines, your nonstop gateway to the world. Also, we have Breeze Airways flying nonstop to Orlando and Tampa, Florida. A great low-cost carrier providing excellent service to the regional community. Fly Erie International for your travel needs.
Fly with ERI.com.
Welcome to TalkErie.com's Joel Natale Show, Erie, Pennsylvania's daily podcast. Every day, we tackle the biggest issues that the Erie, PA region faces. Stay informed and involved as we advance the narrative of Erie. Now, here's Joel Natale.
We want to welcome in Kim Thomas, Wyatt Schroeder from Infinite Erie. Folks, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks for having us.
All right, Wyatt, welcome. We're a family show. We like to get origin stories.
Oh.
We already know where Kim is from. Chris.
Right. Kim,
You know, tell us a little bit about how you came up and how you got to Erie and Infinite Erie. So
Sure. Yeah, let me know if I go too far back or
That's
not far
okay.
back enough. I'm a Pennsylvania kid. Grew up in Chester County.
oh, sweet. Okay.
Yeah, son of a
home of the mushroom.
I'm a son of a mushroom farmer.
Are you really?
Oh yes, I've got mushrooms on one side of the family and steel workers on the other. So I like to represent all sides of the Pennsylvania economy of old. So I've been working in the issue of homeless services and affordable housing my entire career. So went to Allegheny College, and something happened while I was up here in the Northwest, coming up to Erie and taking internships. That's got really curious more about our cities. And
Yeah.
What's the engine behind them? How does it work? When does it not work? And so since then, I've worked in homeless services and led some nonprofits around the country, and then found myself wanting to kind of support partnerships in a different way.
Yeah.
Because I think working in homeless services, you very quickly learn how hard it is to house someone, how difficult it is to move someone from that surviving element of living on the street, living in their car, to get them into permanent housing, and how hard we make it for folks. And so seeing that happen on an individual scale, I wanted to see what's it like on a community scale. So fast forward, I've been working here with Infinite Erie for a couple of years and supporting Kim, and now I just came on board as our housing director, trying to see what's it going to look like to make Erie and Erie County a thrivable, livable place for all and have stable housing.
So why don't we cut to the quick here of how this is being organized? First off, in the Infinite Erie playbook, where does housing come in, and what are some of the stated goals regarding housing?
Yeah, absolutely. So Wyatt's initial work here in Erie around the housing, the unhoused, really was born directly out of the playbook. Mm-hmm. So there is a whole neighborhoods and main streets element to the investment playbook, specifically talking about revitalizing our neighborhoods, providing additional capacity and support for the neighborhood revitalization organizations. But there's also an incredible piece that talks about developing a comprehensive homelessness strategy. And as you can imagine, there would be a lot of elements to a comprehensive homelessness strategy. Wow. So the work that Wyatt's been doing is certainly a component to what requires a much more comprehensive solution to the challenge. In addition to that work within the investment playbook, it's about increasing home ownership opportunities, specifically for BIPOC individuals. Certainly increasing access to affordable housing across the spectrum. So it's really, and over the past 2.5, almost 3 years now, has really risen to the level of being really of the utmost priority in all of the work that we're doing. Just every conversation we have, every corner that we turn, all the conversations with the practitioners who are doing this work, it's really leading us back to this challenge of we've got to get our housing right in our community so that we can, cover all these other elements of community and economic development.
We've seen it here in these conversations. Is it's part of the big three: childcare, homelessness, workforce.
Yep.
Those are the big three that seem to be the real heavy-duty issues that our community is wrestling with right now. So why don't we start with where we were before Infinite Erie? Because I've had many conversations about, the home team, and, you see the work that we're doing in emergency shelters and, building capacity that way. But the emergency side of the coin is kind of a Band-Aid versus the permanent housing side. Again, you've been in this business your whole career. Help me understand all this and help our listeners understand.
Yeah, it's hopefully something that we can all root ourselves in, the idea that we want and need stability. And want and need stability from a health standpoint. We want it from a financial standpoint. And two of the biggest drivers of both of those, our finances and our health, is stable housing. So I think you can almost think about it in the null hypothesis. What would I do tonight if I lost my housing? And what would happen to me if I had to navigate that situation over a long period of time? And if you just kind of almost do that self-exploration, you can start to imagine how my life would change, how my health would potentially start to plummet. We've all potentially been really stressed. And if you picture the worst stress you've ever felt in your life, and imagine you had to feel that level of stress for 9 straight months. Imagine you didn't get quality sleep for 9 straight months. How would you feel? How would it be?
Yeah, it would probably lead to mental illness.
Exactly.
Keep going. Sorry.
So we need housing, right? We need stable housing. And so people talk, there's been a lot of research done around the country on this issue, as I think folks probably know, especially in the last 15 years. And we like to say now that homelessness is a housing problem, that the solution to someone's homelessness is getting them into safe and stable housing. So emergency shelter plays a role in that, but that's not the end of the rainbow. If we get you into shelter tonight, that's just a night-by-night response. We need to get you in that permanent solution, which can only means a lease in your name and stable housing around it and the services you need. So because of that mental illness you're describing, that level of stress that I felt for 9 months or however long I was on the street, I probably need to navigate that. Am I connected to a primary care doctor? Maybe, maybe not. Am I connected to a behavioral health specialist? Maybe, maybe not. Do I have some kind of financial literacy and coach? How and whose job is it to make sure that I'm seeing all those at the right time in the right places? So that's the model that Infinite Erie is supporting, is really saying if we work backwards from stability, that means we need to find a way to, as rapidly as possible, move people from being on the street into stable housing. And once they get there, we need to then bring the services to them. We can't just assume that everyone at that stage of need is able to navigate, at least at the speed that we want, and able to navigate all of their services needs. We got to bring it to them and make sure that they are able to, as quickly as possible, get into stable housing, get a lease in their name, and then get the services and the finances to stay there.
Isn't the entire current system of our economy, of our American economy, working against this preferred future? I feel like with the interest rates being where they are, with the cost of building one unit, in Erie, Pennsylvania, this is shocking to me that one single unit of a multifamily is easily $200,000. That would be on the low end.
I wish it was.
That's on the low end, right?
Yes.
I mean, meanwhile, your existing, I always say we took mid-century modern to the nth degree here. Your existing housing is substandard in a lot of ways, and is just not always serviceable, right?
Mm-hmm. That's the conversation that we've been having, in recent days and recent weeks. Wyatt can dive into the numbers, but, you talk about, what is it with the average cost of a house to own a house is, $140,000. And the average median income that we have here in Erie isn't enough to even, make sure that you can make your monthly mortgage payments. And while, we talk about having, a relatively cheaper cost of living here, it still is not lining up properly with the incomes that we're making and what we're able to sustain
something
moving
did
forward.
Change though around COVID, because you could buy a house and the if you talk to a realtor, said we were well undervalued for the homes, right? So now the values of homes on the general market is more akin to what should be the standard. I mean, people were buying houses 20 years ago, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $90,000 for a decent house, right. And now they're double that, if not more. All right, help me understand, Wyatt.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Like we've built these wealth engines, called homes, and so understandably we're always pushing people towards the prodigal American dream, and that's always been ownership of housing. Well, that's easier to do in certain markets than others, and I think that dream is really starting to slip locally. I think if you look at let's look at the last 10 years. Kim and I are starting to run these numbers. Erie has been building about 8 units a year on average for the last 10 years.
In the city of Erie or in the
city?
county?
In the city of Erie, 8 units.
8 units.
8 units a year have been permitted. So we're not replacing housing stock, right? So if I had a house, it could have been a really quality house, but if it doesn't get that upkeep, if I don't have enough disposable income to pay my mortgage, to pay my rent, and to make sure that house is sustainable going forward, things just start to slip. And I think that slipping can happen over a long period of time, and we're starting to see it right at a whole neighborhood level of certain neighborhoods, in Erie, really seeing a concentration of blight and struggle. And
Charles Buki said there might be 6,000 homes that, and he was the guy that did our in strategic plan. 6,000 homes might be full of blight. Mm-hmm. You take those off the market.
13% of the city.
Yeah.
Is poor and unsound quality. 13%. So you just kind of do that math and those are thousands of homes.
Yes.
And that makes an impact. That makes an impact of where you want to invest, who's coming to town, people's level of stability in their neighborhood. And so you have to turn that curve, right? You have to turn that curve on a housing perspective from the built environment. So what's our role as Infinite Erie to make sure that money is being invested in stabilizing neighborhoods and making sure those homes that we're having more permanent homes every single year so they can replace that lost housing stock or that blighted housing stock, but also on the individual standpoint. I mean, Kim just said, I think, something that blew my mind. Like, the average home rate is $140,000 right now on Redfin. The average renter right now in Erie, the renter who we want to achieve the American dream and own their own home, earns $28,000 a year. They earn half the median income of the city. So the home that they can afford right now, based on that level, is $74,000.
We're halfway there.
Right.
We're halfway there. And to your point, if we want to build something new, you can't build for 74 and then sell for 74 without taking a massive haircut.
Right.
So we have to find a way to subsidize this. We have to really invest very strategically and specifically, in order for people to really move out and move out of potentially an unsafe rental situation into a home that they own. Like, that takes a very aggressive but specific approach.
So does that mean a totally private, market-driven solution is unattainable for housing in Erie, Pennsylvania? I'm saying private, market-driven.
Exclusively, I think, yes.
Unattainable.
I think unattainable. Because there are tools that still inject into the private market. Like, this is getting wonky now, but there are things like low-income housing tax credits.
New market tax credits.
But you know what those do? Those are still tax credits that go towards private businesses.
Correct.
So it's still injecting into the private market, right?
Okay. Well,
so I think there are creative solutions.
So those are possibilities.
Those are possibilities
that could make things pencil out.
But sitting and waiting for the cavalry to come in their shiny private business armor, I think that's potentially unattainable without very strategic investments.
Let's keep down this road here, because I always like that. It's super easy to talk about the problems, right? Mm-hmm. And I think we have to continue to go toward the solution side here. We mentioned the history. We have the home team. There's been a lot of people that have been very, totally mission oriented in this space over decades. I'm thinking we had Habitat for Humanity in here. They're changing lives. Right. One family at a time. Some of these families are huge, like 5-bedroom houses.
That's right.
That are that that are now able to be in suitable housing and things. Let's talk about where the strategy is at for 2025, and really we're talking the next 5 years, right, into 2030. I'm sure. Where's the strategy? Give us the building blocks of how you move from, on a single night count. I thought we were over 1,000 at one point. Maybe we're not that high.
450.
Oh, sorry. 454 is our single night count.
Time people experiencing homelessness
Yeah.
as of the last count in January.
That's in January, yeah. So 454 in some of the numbers that have been thrown out are over 1,000.
Yeah, there's more than that. Of course, that's a
Yeah,
point in time.
point in time, yeah.
Right, and so throughout the year, I think the last number that I was able to see with the county is, I think about 1,200 to 1,400 people will touch the homeless services system in Erie County throughout the year.
Okay. So tell us about the building blocks. Where are we at, and kind of the value add that Infinite Erie is doing with all this.
Yeah, so I think really Infinite Erie's role in this is to bring together, it's the convening piece and the facilitating piece, right? Recognizing that this challenge is here at multiple levels throughout Erie County, bringing together the practitioners, the CDCs, all of the people who do this good work, and having a good understanding of what each of their respective neighborhoods and communities are facing in terms of access to affordable housing. And that includes housing the unhoused. So we're taking a look at the entire, what we've been calling Erie's housing continuum. So from the unhoused with permanent supportive housing as a potential solution there, certainly affordable housing, workforce housing, and even having conversations around market rate housing. But really taking a look at that full spectrum and what it means to have access to affordable housing, regardless of what affordability means to you and your family. So again, it's bringing together the practitioners, trying to coordinate the effort. To Wyatt's point, really being able to move one lot versus really scaling up an effort and batching and concentrating and targeting an effort makes a significant difference in the work that you're doing. So identifying the best practices, that's where we first, came into touch with Wyatt with the housing first, permanent supportive housing being a best practice that Erie should look to model after. So now, again, looking at other opportunities around affordable housing, trying to get a firm understanding within the city specifically, but also potentially throughout the county of what the units gap looks like. Where are we really facing this challenge in terms of being able to, whether it be rental or home ownership, being able to have that stable place to live and work and raise your family. So Wyatt, if you want to maybe touch on some of the pieces that we're focused on now and where hopefully it will ultimately lead us.
Yeah, as we all know, like housing, fundamental, but then immediately complicated. So desperately needed, hard to do. But if we break it down, where we're starting to really work with our partners to hopefully get more specific is what's our focus on preserving housing? What's our role in making sure that the current affordable and safe housing that exists stays that way? What's our role in creating and expanding housing opportunities for rental and homeownership? What's our role of making sure that people who are unhoused get housing? Kind of our third bucket there. And then beneath all of this is really trying to inject capacity and financial support into the systems that Kim has already described and the partners that are already doing this really hard and necessary work.
Right.
Beneath all of that focus around preserving, creating, and housing the unhoused, how can we make sure that there's already people in this work? How can we make sure that they increase their capacity, they don't lose it, especially right now with so much uncertainty around a lot of funding cycles?
That makes a lot of sense. All right, let's kind of knock some of these down. Preserving housing, for example, it used to be that you could get a weatherproofing grant or something like that. I don't know who has that contract right now. I don't think GCAC has that contract anymore. They might. I want to say the last time we talked to Ben Wilson, Dr. Wilson, they don't do that kind of work anymore. So you have the scenario where maybe it's not falling down the house that fixed income retiree has, yet it could use some love, or it needs a roof. I mean, roofs need to be changed every 15, 20 years. It's not a cheap date. It's enough to sock you with a 5 to 7 to 10 year loan, right? I mean, can you imagine a 75-year-old taking on a loan like that? It's insane.
Yeah, for preservation, two of the things immediately come to mind that Kim and I are thinking about this. One, it's picturing the who. So just like you're picturing the 75-year-old retiree, right now there are 2,300 households in the city of Erie that own a home and are severely cost burdened. So just paying the mortgage on their current existing costs, 2,300.
Wow.
They've achieved the American dream, but they're keeping the roof around them. They're probably having to do that budget trade-off every single day. Do I want the extra fruit and vegetable this week, or do I really need to save up because it was winter and my utility costs spiked? So I think then that gets to our question. We don't exactly know what this looks like, but how can we get to know those case studies, those 2,300 people, to know what is the best intervention to keep you in your home? Mm-hmm. You know, and who do we need to convene?
So is that a case management kind of work?
Well, I think we'll have to see. I mean, obviously there were some resources that existed under the American Rescue Plan during COVID. Those have stopped. So without some of this preserving housing rental assistance, we'll have to kind of see what that needs to look like. I think weatherization and other existing programs that exist, and connecting those to the right targeted areas is always important. And we'll have to see where that conversation goes. The other side is the actual housing units themselves. How can we make sure that something that is currently being used for affordable and workforce housing doesn't slip away into disrepair? And there are, over the next 7 years, 500 units, for instance, that had some kind of government backing to create them, that are about to lose their subsidy.
You have been called
to do good,
to feed the hungry,
to love with action,
to be a light in the darkness,
to love your neighbor,
to teach wisdom,
to walk humbly,
to love mercy,
to care for the least of these.
Will you accept the call?
This is our city.
Our mission.
Visit eriecitymission.org/volunteer to accept the call today.
All year round, Frontier Home Products and Design has what you need to make your home comfortable and beautiful. Relax on a new timber tech deck designed by Frontier's experts. A new fireplace from Frontier Home Products Fireplace Gallery adds warmth and serenity to any home. Beauty and versatility at Frontier Home Products and Design Center, 4213 Peachtree, 5th next to the Bayfront Highway.
Frontier Home Products and Design Center. Discover a new frontier.
PA contractor number PA039007.
Get paid to drive. Start a new career behind the wheel at the EMTA. If you are looking for a high-paying and rewarding career with full benefits and paid training, stop by or apply online today with the EMTA. Plus, EMTA riders can now enjoy free Wi-Fi on new, clean, and environmentally friendly buses to travel all over Erie County. Visit ridethe.com for more information.
Get on board EMTA. Get on board EMTA. Get on board.
Kim, I want to do a quick pause here on our housing conversation and circle back to this concept of the this fund that has been risen up by the Erie Community Foundation, and you guys are kind of riding herd on this concept of, we have the refugee resettlement organizations that frankly haven't gotten any income based on their contracts in the last 6 months. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's right. So you're absolutely right. So the federal government, for all intents and purposes, has frozen the resources that would normally be funneling through the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to these resettlement agencies, and certainly a number of additional. So you have 3 specific agencies that are fully focused on the resettlement community, and that's USCRI, formerly International Institute, Multicultural Community Resource Center, and Catholic Charities. But again, beyond these 3 agencies, there are a number of nonprofits that are providing support to resettlement individuals and families. But the funding has not been coming back to these agencies. I believe the last payment that these agencies received from the federal government was back in October. And they are providing the critical services to individuals and families who, for the first 5 years of their time here in Erie, resettled into this community, are eligible for this type of support. And it's really important to remember that these individuals, these family members, they are here legally as refugees who have been brought to the United States by the United States in order to save them essentially from various war-torn communities or persecution or other humanitarian crises that they might be facing, and oftentimes even they may have been waiting for years and even perhaps decades for their opportunity to come to Erie specifically. So Infinite Erie, in coordination with the Community Foundation and a number of other organizations here in the community, recognize this as a crisis. From Infinite Erie's perspective, it is an economic crisis for our community. So bringing together this rapid response team to recognize, yes, there needs to be a longer term conversation, a longer term strategy put in place should we ever face, funding shortages and crises like this again in the future. But this is a crisis right here, right now at this moment. These are individuals and families who are significant contributors to our everyday economy. From Infinite Erie's, every day we're looking at these North Star pillars that we're really trying to move the needle on, and it's population growth, it's economic growth, growing the GDP, growing the average median income, growing our workforce, growing access to affordable housing, and the refugee population plays a significant role in all of that. They play a significant role in our workforce, in our entrepreneurial community. We're talking, this population owns 5% of businesses throughout Erie County, even though they only make up 4.1%. So at the end of the day, you have almost 4,000 refugees who have been resettled in Erie County since 2021. And again, they're eligible for these services over a 5-year period. But now we're at a moment in time where the resources to sustain the agencies and these programs are not accessible and available to these individuals, whether it be for transportation purposes, childcare purposes, just helping them with language barriers and transitioning into the community. So it could, at the end of the day, have a really large economic impact, let alone the human impact.
So this is actually a fundraising kind of campaign as a rapid response.
It is. That's right. Yeah. So we're looking really from a public awareness standpoint, so that the community at large understands what kind of an impact we're talking about here. But it's this collective really call to action, specifically with, certainly the funders in the community, but from an individual perspective, an opportunity to contribute to a fund that the Community Foundation has recently stood up, which they've done in the past, right? So the Community Foundation has history here with around COVID-19 and the onset of the war in Ukraine, establishing these rapid response funds to be here in the time of need for our fellow Erie residents. So that's what they've done here. So establish this fund, launch this fund with which anyone can contribute to. And initially, those resources will be used to help support the agencies that are doing the supportive work for refugee populations. And ultimately, as we move down the road, if there are other crises in the future that need to be handled as well.
Who's handling the kind of the big level conversations? I mean, at some point, I would think that either our legislators would be involved in saying, hey, look, whatever agency this was, I don't even know where the refugees are coming in through, State Department, I guess, or I don't know. But at some point, I would think that Mike Kelly or John Fetterman or Senator McCormick, yes, would say, these agencies in my state had these contracts to handle this particular cohort of refugees, of which there's caps. There's a yearly cap nationally, and I mean it's all managed. Mm-hmm. You just, we're not talking about future refugees. We're talking about the current under contract refugees. We need to actually pay the bill.
That's right. That's exactly right. So from a large conversation, there are certainly advocacy efforts that need to be had, both at the state and federal levels. There are no state resources that currently exist or come into Erie for these particular purposes, and obviously at the federal level. And Infinite Erie is coordinating and facilitating bringing those groups together to have those conversations, and really the agencies and the individuals, the refugees themselves, to coordinate really a public awareness effort to tell their stories and the impacts that they're having, again, to help the rest of our community understand what they are bringing to Erie County specifically, and what could be the potential impacts of them no longer receiving these services.
All right. I hope that you'll keep us informed on how this is all going here. I'm going to pivot back to this housing. It's such a huge issue. I mean, and we were talking about kind of the different levels. Wyatt, you talked about the housing, the affordable housing. You talked about workforce housing, market rate housing, and of course the whole emergency housing and so on. What kind of impact do you think that this housing first model and this kind of conversation could have on the marketplace? Because, if I go and talk to a realtor in Erie, they're like, finally, we're at a proper value for the housing stock here. Again, we go back to 2017 and the Charles Buki plan. We were just trying to find the floor of our housing values. We were in a steep decline. That all turned around around COVID, when all of a sudden we had a scarcity of market rate housing, and the market shot up. And now you have our young people, especially our millennials and our Gen Zers, not able to afford an entry level house. I mean, if it's on the market at all, it doesn't exist. Or worse yet, people that want to go from entry level to their next house. I mean, go try to find something. Now, hopefully, maybe this year it'll loosen up. But what are your thoughts on all that?
I mean, it's somehow only. I've been working in the issue of housing since 2009, and even though, we're all taught from conversations with our parents the value and importance of having stable housing, and we learn that just as kids in terms of the way our brain architecture craves stability and craves predictability.
Sure.
Somehow, in a national conversation, housing has really not been at the core. Coming out of two major recessions, at least in my working lifetime, still we haven't had that many clear conversations on a national level about how much we should inject into our housing system. And a lot of that has been, we're waiting for private development. Private development will carry it forward, even though we've had major recessions as a fallout of what private development can do.
Right.
So there's this chicken and the egg at the local level of how important it is to talk about housing, which is jobs and economic vitality and stable housing. We talk about them like they're separate conversations, but they're not. They're the same.
Right.
If you think about it from an individual standpoint, like you just laid out, it makes perfect sense. I want to build my own wealth. Well, then I want to live in a place that has reasonable appreciation of a home. I want to buy it at this level, live there for as long as I'm able, and it fits my family. And then eventually I want to sell it with a little bit of cash back in my pocket, even though I put it in. The same thing's true for a community. We want to attract the right kind of developers locally, ideally, those who are investing in their community. And then we want to see that housing grow, because that's another way of judging whether or not people want to live here. But they only want to live here, right, if there are stable jobs to go with it. And so there's a chicken and egg of the economic vitality and the home that I want to move into.
Sure.
So another way of thinking about it is, we mentioned earlier in the show that there are about 8 units every single year coming into Erie. 8. Well, that has an economic number too. So in the last 5 years of development, there's only been about $2 million pumped into the housing market.
That's amazing, considering we've been under alerta now since 2019, I think, which means that if you build on an unimproved lot, that whole building is tax-free for 10 years.
Yeah. So if we want to see more economic vitality, investing in housing is a way to do it. And then ideally, I mean, $2 million doesn't get you that many units anymore, unfortunately.
Sure
Just like we're talking about, maybe obviously for us as people, $2 million sounds a lot for me personally, but to build housing, $2 million doesn't go that far. And if that's over a 5-year period, that's not a lot of economic movement in investing in our neighborhoods, investing in people being stably housed. So we've got to increase that number. And I think this is what Infinite Erie is really taking on, is how can there be a better pipeline of projects, worthy projects that can offer stable housing at both the very low end, people who really need it, who are impoverished, but also people who need workforce housing because they want to move to Erie and they'd rather do it in the city but only if there's a stable neighborhood around it and the right kind of home for me. So what's that funding approach? That's what Infinite Erie really contemplates, to make sure that those numbers go up, that we put more units in place and we see more economic development happening.
Can I ask you just a dumb economic question from I feel very uneducated.
It better be dumb. If it comes back and it's actually an incisive question, I'm going to be sad.
Okay. I don't understand how places like Southern California work, for example, or even, let's say, Cleveland suburbs. Okay, you're acquainted with that very heavily. I mean, when you have a house that's, let's say, $450,000, and the median income of a metro like Cleveland, even if you're making 60-70% of the 20% above the median, how the heck can you afford a $450,000 house in Cleveland when your household income is maybe $90,000, for example? Mm-hmm. How does that work? How does it work to buy a $1.2 million house, let's say in Riverside, in Southern California? I don't get it at all. Like, how it works.
Yeah, and this is like back to the chicken and the egg, where a lot of those places are seeing increase in jobs and income, and they're seeing an even more rapid rise in housing costs.
Right.
Which a very, very hyper micro version is happening here. It just maybe doesn't look like it. So in the last 10 years, income has risen in the city of Erie by 27%, but the median rent has gone up by 29%. So sure, you could look at one version of that equation and go, hey, look, this is okay. Maybe it's modest, but we're seeing an increase in income. But that income's getting gobbled up immediately by a housing cost. So that's not like there's not actually extra money in my pocket.
Yeah,
so
29% is not inclusive of the 25% of grocery cost increases.
Right. Or gas.
Or gas or anything, yeah.
So I think there's probably a version of those same numbers that are happening elsewhere as well.
Elsewhere, yeah.
It's just they're a lot larger, and so they can give us
Did
a sticker
it
shock.
ever, like, again, you sitting in Cleveland and you're doing all this major work in Cleveland, like, and in Philly too, right? I mean, Montgomery County or Chester County. Like, did it ever make your eyes bug out and say, how are those people affording that house?
Oh, correct. We actually
because that happens to be all the time.
I'm doing some work in Montgomery County, which is the richest county in Pennsylvania.
Sure.
And so there's my own bias coming from working in homeless services, working in shelters, where it's like, all right, this is the richest county. What do we complain about here? But then you actually do the math. So this is maybe going to offend some people listening. The median income in Montgomery County, our richest county, is $110,000 per household. 110.
110 per household.
Which is over twice what it is here in the city of Erie.
But still, in the grand scheme of things, not that much.
But,
go ahead. Yeah.
And this is where it's going. To your point, that household cannot afford the median home in Montgomery County, which is now over $500,000. So if you do that math, someone who's earning $110,000 in Montgomery County probably feels like they made it, right? Those are big numbers. But if they want to move out of that rental in Norristown and move into Cheltenham and they want to buy a home, the math doesn't work, even with that much income. So there's just I think there's a version of that story happening at all income levels in all of our cities across the state.
Jeez. And then you have, abhorred conditions that some people live in.
That's right.
But because it gets them out of the elements, they're willing to pay the ridiculous rent just to, and try to get by that way or something.
Yeah, 55% of people in the city of Erie are cost burdened. They're paying more than a third of their income towards their housing cost. So I think your point is, like you heard the phrase, the rent always eats first.
Yeah.
Right. So you want to go out tonight to Lavery. You want to go out tonight somewhere in town. Well, the rent eats first. Right. You want to have a nice meal. It's your anniversary. Well, the rent eats first. Right. Oh, childcare just cost went up. Rent eats first. So,
I kind of feel guilty because I got in when everything was cheap. Mm-hmm. And I had, I bought and held as opposed
survivor's guilt.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
All right, I got like 3 minutes. We got to bring this plane in for a landing here. We're talking to Kim and to Wyatt from Infinite Erie. So what do the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months look like for you guys in this space, in this housing space? We know what Build CDC is doing. They bought my old Washington school. That's where I went to kindergarten,
really?
right? Yeah, right. I mean, I went and not only will they use that building, but I think they're building they're building another 50 units in addition on that block,
that's what
right?
they're looking at now, trying to figure out what the best companion component to the schoolhouse apartments.
So they can convert the Washington School and then build some more, right?
That's right.
So that's one, but that's just one element, right?
That's right.
I mean, we're hearing a lot about the Avalon. That seems to be an exciting, quote, workforce. What does that mean? Like, what's the rent at like an Avalon for a 1-bedroom? We talking 600 to 800, or?
I feel like it was around 9.
They were around 9.
8, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, again, for the old timers, that sounds like a lot for rent, but.
Yeah, workforce, when you hear that term, it's usually trying to say someone who's earning about the mean income, maybe a little more.
Okay.
So for us, like in the city, that'd be about someone earning, let's say, $50,000 as a household. $50,000. So earning that rent might be $900 to $1,200, maybe somewhere in that range.
If somebody wants to dive into this Section 8 world, which is the affordable housing world, which is subsidized housing, right? First off, we don't know what the future holds in that realm, right, Wyatt? I mean, you're crossing your fingers.
Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. I mean, Section 8 and others have been largely underfunded across the country, but with the new congressional budget, we'll have to see what happens at a federal level. But we're hearing a lot about so the U.S. HUD, the Housing Urban Development at a national level, who stewards a lot of money for homeless services and housing. But we're hearing about cuts. Now, HUD has been underfunded by about 20% since 2009. So it's already, as our housing crisis has gotten worse, our main federal resource has been less and less funded. And we're
That's
hearing more
unusual.
about that.
2009 was the year that it started going south, since we were just we were in the throes of the housing crisis.
We injected a lot of one-time funding.
Yeah.
And then if you remember the Grand Compromise between President Obama and Speaker Boehner and sequestration, what happened? And then one of the things that got cut was HUD. And so we've never come back from that moment.
Do you feel that our public housing is stable? Is there a great need? I mean, I feel like Hands has, Hands, which is the private organization, but also the housing, the housing authority seems to have a very good reputation around here, right? I mean, what are we in good shape with that? Or we just need a lot more? What do you think?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, we always need more.
Right.
I mean, we always need more in terms of trying to figure out how we can, creatively finance the number of units that we need at all levels of affordability. So that's really why it's digging into now, is to figure out whether it be for chronic homelessness, like what's our gap there? What do we really need to focus on? If it's 35 apartments, or units at schoolhouse apartments, if it's an additional 50 scattered site throughout the community for the unhoused, and then what does that look like at varying levels of income and affordability throughout that entire spectrum? What is something realistic that we as a community, with all of our CDC partners and developers that we have here working in this really critical space right now, what does that look like, bringing them together and launching them out there into implementation to identify what are some of those creative different types of housing solutions that we can finance, get built, and get people into them.
I have to leave it there. If anybody has an illusion that this is going to be an inexpensive situation, I mean, we're already hearing that just the emergency housing, could be $30 million and above. So, Wyatt Schroeder, Kim Thomas, thank you guys so much.
You've been listening to The Joel Natale Show, Erie, Pennsylvania's daily podcast from TalkErie.com. Subscribe to our show on your favorite podcatcher and get involved by emailing joel@TalkErie.com.